everyone. I hope that your day is going well. If you haven't paying attention, then you not yet. There has been a blast at the Freedom Bridge. Here at Wilson said that it is an attempted terrorist attack. Someone is on that on YouTube, and well, we don't really know, but I guess in my opinion, not looking. I need to get my set. It was either an NBC broadcast or broadcast. I mean, one kind of things if it looks like it and it talks like a duck. I'm on the. I gotta make sure. Let's put that in. Fox News that this there's a terror attack attempted or otherwise.
Surprised to learn that this attack emanated from the U.S. northern border?
I am. I think I've been on Fox and said I really very much worry about the southern border. But I think there's been enough people talking about the concerns at the southern border that they may have just thought they had a better opportunity to enter from the north. We work so closely with Canadian authorities, and they have real law enforcement and intelligence capability. And there's less traffic there, so we just tend to worry about it less. It's been many years since we saw somebody attempt to bring a vehicle explosive device over that border, and that was over on the West Coast. And so I just think we don't think of it as large a threat as we do the southern border.
Yeah, Fran, there's still some confusion as to which direction this vehicle was headed in. There's some eyewitnesses who say it was headed toward Canada. But taking a look at the landscape there, it looks kind of like the car was trying to enter the United States, because when you go across to Canada, you go through an easy pass lane, which is a toll. And then coming back, of course, you go through Customs and Border Protection. We're also getting some conflicting reports here about whether or not the other bridges are closed. The Ontario Provincial Police said that the Peace Bridge, which is at the end of the Queen Elizabeth Way that comes down through Canada, Niagara Falls, and then crosses over Buffalo, was closed. And then the Queenston-Lewiston Bridge, which is north of the Rainbow Bridge, was closed. That was according to authorities in Ontario. But now, according to Chad Pergram, members of the New York congressional delegation tell Fox that border crossings between New York and Canada were given guidance to further scrutinize every car, but not closed. So we'll try to nail that down. I mean, Fran, we have over the last 30 years seen everything from homegrown terrorism to imported jihad to lone wolves to organized plots. Where does this seem to fit in on that spectrum to you?
You know, I don't think we have enough information to really say with confidence. It could be a lone wolf. It could be an individual. You know, putting together these kinds of explosive devices is not that complicated. Regrettably, there's an awful lot of information on the internet for somebody who's sort of with a high school science background. And so it could be a lone wolf. It's just the size of the explosive device, and we can only tell that from the explosion itself, sort of suggests to me that it's something more than that. But I do think we have to wait for law enforcement to release additional facts before we can make a judgment.
Take a listen, Fran, if you will, to recent testimony by the FBI Director Christopher Wray. This is what he had to say about the terrorist attack against the U.S. the terrorist threat against the U.S. homeland.
Yep.
Here in the United States, our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals or small groups, will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives.
Well, seems prescient, though this is not exactly, as you point out, the type of attack, you know, certainly ordinary Americans might envision coming on the holiday weekends.
No, that's right. But we know that jihadist groups have a preference for attacking transportation nodes, right? They used aviation on 9/11. We've seen car bombs before. We saw them attack trains in London previously. And so transportation modes are just one of the areas that they're comfortable with. And so, again, we need more information. We need to gather more data. But, you know, I do think this sort of has the feeling of being more organized than simply a lone wolf.
So we've got a little bit more, I don't know if it's really, you could call it clarity because we're not exactly sure, it doesn't spell it out directly, but Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, says, I've been briefed by our staff in New York State and headquarters on the explosion and related bridge closures on the U.S.-Canada border and am in touch with my Canadian counterpart. Travelers in the area should follow instructions and updates from law enforcement and state officials on travel impacts. Still unclear whether or not anything more than the Rainbow Bridge is closed. It's also kind of strange that, Fran, we're looking at live pictures here of what looks like the aftermath. You see some debris in the road. You see what looks like a fire hose stretched across the road, but no activity other than that. I don't know if everybody has been evacuated from that area until explosives and hazmat teams come in or not. But again, let me just come back to this because we have seen in the past, significant, if you're targeting something with a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, it's typically some sort of landmark type of target. Mm-hmm. To do this at a border crossing seems a little unusual. And you wonder, was this vehicle destined for somewhere else? They felt like they were trapped. They decided to go for what they could. They pulled the trigger on it. Were they coming in from Canada? Were they in the United States? I mean, does it seem to you like a customs kiosk at an international bridge would be a logical target?
No. And so, again, this is why I say we'll get more information as we get, as law enforcement is further into the investigation. It may very well be that the intended target was inside the United States. Okay. Look, there's parades all over. So you never know where that target could have been.
Yeah, as we saw some years ago, and I think that you were in the job back then. We saw that vehicle try to cross in Washington State with LAX as its target. Hey, Fran, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for jumping on the phone with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's go back to Morgan Ortagus. She's standing by with us now. Morgan, so confirmation now that the man who was injured on the scene is a Customs Border Patrol officer.
an idea of.
Do you think that that changes anything about the nature of the investigation, given that a U.S. official has
Called
now
logic,
been
but terrorists do
successfully
have-
targeted by terrorists?
Yeah, we certainly pray for him and his hopefully recovery. What it reminds all of us is that as we look to Thanksgiving tomorrow and we're all planning what we're cooking and what we're going to do, that first responders, law enforcement around this country, people in the FBI are spending their time tomorrow. Cops and others are spending their time making sure that we are safe. We know that law enforcement and first responders around the country now are obviously going to be on even more heightened alert than they already were. We saw yesterday that there was an increase, reportedly an increased attack threshold for New York State. So this may have been part of the chatter that they were seeing. You know, no, I just looked up the last fiscal year numbers for the number of individuals in the FBI database that are known or suspected terrorists that came across the northern border. That number grew to 484 in just the last fiscal year. There also is, I think, people who are more hawkish on immigration have long argued that Canada actually has a problem with their internal vetting, their own internal immigration issues that could be a security threat for both countries. That may be what happens today. Just to go back to 1.2, we were talking about the social media aspect of this and what terror groups are able to do. Well, remember during the second term of the Obama administrations when ISIS had a physical caliphate in Iraq and Syria, and ISIS was very sophisticated at that point at recruiting young people from around the world to come to the physical caliphate to fight with them. They put out these really slick videos. I remember at the time there was all of these young British women that were coming to be ISIS brides. Now we're seeing, and I've been warning about this for weeks since the October 7th terror attack, we're seeing on TikTok specifically, but also other social media sites, again, that sophisticated propaganda because Hamas felt like it had a win. So people start to get encouraged and feel like, similar as they did in the mid-2000s with ISIS, that, you know, perhaps this terror group is something that they can be invested in. Maybe they're on the winning side.
Are you concerned, like, again, with very bare bones facts we have available right now, are you concerned that whoever these people are, whatever their motivating ideology is, they have managed to shut down, at the very least, an international border crossing into the United States on the eve of a very important major American holiday, what some people regard as the busiest travel day of the year? They're already heralding this a success, whoever they are.
Yeah, of course I'm concerned about it. I mean, because we know that law enforcement around the country and first responders are already on heightened alert. We'll remember that we had the Nigerian bomber on Christmas Day. I'm aging myself. That was probably, 10, 12 years ago. So we know that, we do know that even in Nashville, again, this was 5-7 years ago, it was an American who did this. But remember, Nashville was, and they just actually rebuilt the part of Nashville that was blown up on Christmas Day down by the riverfront there. So we know that people do try. What's the point of terrorism? The point of terrorism is to have a spectacular result that strikes hearts and the fear of people. So if you could do it on a national holiday, if you could scare people from going to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade or scare people on Christmas Day, then that adds to even the more dramatic effect that terrorist organizations like to have around the world.
Yeah. According to David Spunt, Merrick Garland received a full briefing on what the FBI and DHS knows at this point. Obviously, Director Wray, because the FBI is taking the lead on this, knows all about this. I mean, so many questions here. First of all, was this even somebody who came in from outside of the country? We don't know. Could this have been a homegrown terrorist, as we saw with
Or could it have come? It could have come from Canada as well.
Could it have come from Canada as well? Again, the direction of travel of the vehicle is something that is uncertain at this point. That appears to be the side of the bridge where you come across the bridge to the American side, and that's where you're checked in to come into the United States. The other side of that bridge, there's basically easy pass lanes that you go through on your way to Canada, and then when you get to the other side of the bridge, then you're checked in by the Canadian authorities. So see, this is on the left side of the bridge. You can see the, I guess those are solar panels there in the lower right-hand side of that picture, that sort of arc there at the bottom. That's the American side. That's Niagara Falls, New York, Niagara Falls, Canada on the other side. So if the car was at that particular point, and I wish I had a telestrator because I could show it to you, it would appear to be coming in, you know, on the bottom side of the screen through those kiosks there to check into the United States, because on the other side of those solar panels, that's just an easy pass lane where you go through and you go across the bridge to the Canadian side. So it may be that this vehicle was coming in from Canada And maybe, like we saw in Washington, this was a person who had designs on something more than blowing up a kiosk at a bridge. I mean, thank God the Customs and Border Protection officer that was there is not seriously injured, though he's been taken to the hospital. But again, we don't know, is this foreign-born terrorism? Is this domestic terrorism? How old are these people? We don't know anything.
Well, to that, interestingly, to your point, John, we just got a new reaction from the Canada Border Services Agency. They say the health and safety of the public and our officers is of the utmost importance to Canada Border Services. They say they are very aware of the evolving situation. They're liaising with the U.S., but they say that the FBI is now leading on the ground in this ongoing investigation. We don't know that necessarily means the U.S. was the target or Americans were the target of the attack. It would certainly point to that eventuality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can only imagine Canadian officials would be in charge of the ongoing investigation.
Well, it was definitely on the American side. I think we could say that for sure, because that is the American side. When you take a look at what the landscape looks like, that's the American side, and those are the areas where you pull up. You've driven across the Rainbow Bridge. You pull up. The officer says, "Let me see your passport. Where are you going? How long are you staying? When are you coming back?" That sort of thing. So that would definitely appear to be the American side. When you take a look, Morgan, at what happened in the aftermath of 9/11, when everybody looked back and said, "Oh, you know what? The warning lights were blinking red." Well, Christopher Wray said that to two committees in Congress, and obviously the FBI was correct here. And things have been on a heightened state of alert. There was a heightened state of alert at the March for Israel. That was designated a level 1 security event, just like the Super Bowl. There's a heightened alert in New York City for tomorrow's Macy's Day Parade. But you never think about, the Rainbow Bridge, which I first came across as a kid on a school trip when I was 10 years old, because I remember my dollar was from Canada was worth $1.07 in the United States. You never expect that it's going to happen there.
Well, and that's why you have to be prepared for all eventualities. I mean, I remember everybody who worked in counterterrorism post 9/11, that was the discussion that we had throughout the Bush administration and into the early Obama administration, was how do we prevent a terrorist attack from coming across either border, from our southern or northern border. And this is certainly not a time to play politics, but when you look at the policy of the situation, people have been warning, myself included, for a long time that it is untenable to let millions of people into this country when we don't know who they are. Similarly, as I said, there have been a lot of people who are hawkish on immigration policy who have not been comfortable with Canada's vetting system as well. So that's something you're going to have to look at both in this country. I don't know how much more this White House can take, to be honest. I mean, it feels like every few months there is a war in a new theater, or there is now an attack on the homeland. Remember, we talk a lot about Israel. I came on the show initially to talk about Israel and what was happening there. There were at least 31 Americans that are killed there. Still at least 9 Americans that we know of that are held hostage in Israel. And as I've been saying since October 7th, whenever Iran and Hamas and these other organizations chant down death to Israel, they chant death to death to America in the next breath. So there were Americans killed. It requires a response. And by the way, there's ongoing attacks against American bases right now, right? Since October 7th and even before. But there are record number of attacks against U.S. bases. That's why we're here. Of God that an American soldier hasn't been killed yet.
Apparently, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was speaking on this. We don't have the sound turned yet, but he basically said a lot of questions. Will continue to engage and provide updates for border crossings right now closed. So there you go. Additional measures being contemplated, taking this extraordinarily seriously. He's gone off to a meeting to find out more. We'll get that sound turned for you.
In the meantime, Morgan, thanks so much for being with us. Let's bring in Paul Morrow. He's a retired NYPD inspector. Sir, do you read anything into the fact that it is U.S. officials who have taken the lead in this ongoing investigation, the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force working hand in glove with New York State Police?
I mean, it's possible. Right now, we're very clearly in the fog of war. And as we always say, in situations like this, of the first 10 reports, 9 of them are going to be wrong. One of the things I've heard, and I caveat this as soft intel, is that, the big question here is, was the car going from Canada into America or America into Canada, which goes to the question you're asking. And I've seen both reported. One of the other things I'm hearing, though, is that the car may have left from the American side, entered the Rainbow Bridge, and pulled a U-turn, and then came back towards America, which would somewhat go to the question you're talking about, which is why the American side has the ticket. Look, they've looked at the plates, I'm sure. They are reverse engineering who's involved here very, very quickly. Some of the reporting says that they're looking for another car someplace at an airport or whatever. I haven't seen that corroborated. The point is they're operating off the data point.
But I'm wanting you to see. There's a lot of at the bridge.
And they're trying to figure out who's responsible, and they want to see if anybody else is involved. You can bet they're up on social media. They're probably already going at the phones. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes now, I can guarantee you that.
Paul, just to your point as to whether or not the car pulled a U-turn, just looking at a photo of the bridge, there's a small curb that you could probably easily get a car up and over if you wanted to turn around. There's nothing like a Jersey wall that's going to prevent you from doing it, at least not according to this photo. But this photo is actually from 2015, so maybe they've updated it since then. But can you even begin to formulate in your head who might be responsible for this? I mean, when you take a look at all of the people who have designs against America, there's the remnants of ISIS. Al-Qaeda is still out there. There's Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There is maybe some Hamas operatives or Hamas sympathizers. We have seen the FBI director give congressional testimony that we are at a higher level of threat since the heyday of ISIS. Is there any one specific group that immediately comes to mind if this were to be either a person who represents a terror group or is sympathetic to a terror group?
I would hesitate to pin this to any particular group. I mean, the obvious conclusion is that it goes to what's going on in Gaza. This feels to me, and I look at full disclosure, I did this work for about 15 years. My gut tells me here, lone wolf. It sounds like there are two perps in the car. And the other thing is this, as of now, it looks like everybody's carrying it as a terrorist attack. And that does seem to be where it's developing, but we haven't even gotten that confirmed. So let's posit that it's a terrorist attack. If that's the case, then I think what you're looking at is lone wolves, potentially radicalized online, sympathetic to likely the Gazan cause. That does seem to be the trigger here. It does not have the sophistication, reach, or impact of something that would go to a nation state, for instance. While this might be inspired by somebody who is an adherent of ISIS or Iran, this doesn't punch at that weight. And so filling a car with whatever kinds of explosives and then ramming it into a barrier, that's not a very high-tech event, thankfully. And it speaks to something that is relatively homemade. And I think one of the things that corroborates that is, thank God, as of now, it looks like we don't have a very high fatality rate, maybe only the two people that were in the car, and maybe only an injured CBP officer. So thank God for that. I would say low-level attack, inspired, not a dyed-in-the-wool adherent to a foreign terrorist organization, and something of a homespun event reacting to the news.
A few moments ago, Paul, we did learn that law enforcement was investigating the possibility, this according to our sources, that there was a second vehicle involved. We don't know where that vehicle may have been. Is that the priority right now behind the scenes for law enforcement who are actually dealing with this? Are they sort of scrambling to figure out whether anybody else was involved or this was, as you say, a sort of lone wolf attack?
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the things you want to make sure when something like this happens is that there isn't another device out there. And I've been in this circumstance where you have the one guy, he's alive, and you just want to make sure, did you have somebody else with you? Strangely, they'll talk to you. The thing about interviewing a terrorist is that it's not getting them to talk very often. It's getting them to shut up, because terrorism is how they talk to the world. And so very often you want to try to get to the heart of the matter, which is there anything else out there? Is there another device? Do you have a conspirator? They want to talk about U.S. foreign policy and its various transgressions. So it's a difficult interview. You got to try to keep the person honed. Doesn't sound like that's what's going on here. I would argue that here what they likely did was reverse engineered off of the plate. They may have already ID'd who's in the car, completely, the two of them. And maybe what it comes down to is, well, we have the one guy who comes back to this car, but there's a second piece. There's another guy that was in the car. His car is not accounted for. There could be also a different data point involved here. They could have gone on social media and seen somebody say something like, okay, if you're going to do that, I will go active as well. And so they're chasing that down. There's some reason, clearly, if they are in fact looking for a second car, that they're doing that. I'm reminded of an event that we had here in New York City. We had some indicia that there might have been a collaborator, and we were looking high and low for this person, and it turned out that it was innocuous. He didn't have anything to do with it, and it was just we were led in the wrong direction. But you're going to have to close off any possibility here, because God forbid this is more sophisticated. Could be significant, especially when you consider where we are. It's the day before Thanksgiving. It's a travel day. I don't think any of that is an accident.
Yeah, and then that is the big question. Hey, Paul, pause just for a second here with us. Have some sound from the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's play it.
States, wherever he is. He'll be traveling with all his top aides, and so he'll be receiving a briefing shortly and hopefully learn more. I think right now FBI, we're told, is still investigating the situation, and we'll update the president as soon as they know more.
Yeah, Lucas, there are so many unanswered questions in all of this, and I'm sure that the White House, the National Security Council, the Homeland Security Council, they're all looking into this to see what might be behind it all. Lucas Tomlinson for us on Nantucket. Thank you. So many questions unanswered here as we're just in the first hours of what happened.
Look how many times he fucking 3 times. Where other ended up stream opened 3 fucking times. Dad. I'm gonna have to and it's all because I have enough. That's just, I think that's what it is. All right. This calculator is now fixed. But trying to weigh myself on. Hey, did I sound? I think it's on. Okay. Might have this fixed at last. Let's see. Let's see how I sound. For the love of fucking God. This is ridiculous. We're not gonna worry right now about showing the Canadian border live. We're just gonna go back to Fox. Spy system can't handle it, apparently. I'm even having background noise on my audio that I should not have. I think I just fixed that a little bit.
This vehicle was in New York, and this attack.
And well, it appears likely that it was some sort of terrorist act. Whether or not it was, this should be terrifying to every American, because we know that with an open border in the South, that Eric just recited the statistics for the terrorist watch list people caught, 90% caught at the northern border. That's because we don't have a southern border. And we know that there are those in this country today wanting to do us harm. And we just need to be more vigilant, and we need to close that southern border.
Yeah, and I understand that,
And
sir. But on this,
who recently
case
tried to
right
talk to
here,
us about it?
what's your
Vivek
takeaway
Ramaswamy.
from what you think is happening? And I think my big concern, as you look at the scene that's unfolding actually on the Rainbow Bridge, what is this report about a secondary vehicle? So there are concerns now, and sometimes these turn out to be false alarms, but there is now a concern that there is potentially a second vehicle that is somehow at large in the United States, in the Buffalo area, that may be connected to this other thing. What's the process of going about that, Governor?
Well,
A lot of people have their issues with this guy, and they don't like him.
Set up roadblocks around the entire
But
area where the suspected
he tried to tell us
was.
that we needed to be concerned about the Canadian border.
Every vehicle out and make sure that if there is a second vehicle, it gets stopped before it can pull off another attack like the one
Orpheus,
that
yes,
we just
casualty
witnessed.
count at the
And,
Rainbow Bridge stands at 2
This is
so far.
enormously concerning because whether there's a second vehicle or not, I fear there is going to be a second vehicle at some point somewhere, not just in New York. And the other concern is we heard Director Wray's testimony about Hamas and the war motivating
Thank you for the
people
22
in the United
people
States.
who.
On September 11th, there were 3 separate attacks. It wasn't
Thank
one
you to the
attack.
22
So
people that
we
stuck
just
with
have
me
to
while I
raise
was
the
getting
level of
my
vigilance,
shit
try
together
to
with
apprehend
my
a second car if in fact that exists.
issues. If you
Close
want
the
to help
border,
me get
and
better equipment
understand
and not
that,
have those kind of problems,
as long as we allow
you can see that
people
there are
just
multiple
by the
ways
millions to cross into our
to
country
help me
unknown,
become a better
we are
streamer.
at risk.
Yeah, and we knew as soon as the current governor, Kathy Hochul, was going to the scene that this, in fact, was a serious situation. Tell me, sir, if you were still the governor right now, what's the first thing when you get into this area? What's the first thing that you want to know?
Well, the first thing I want to know is, were they alone? Was it a terrorist attack, and were they alone? Was there that second vehicle? And if that's unclear, I would have.
And
the
see,
state
now there's
police,
going to
the
be
local police, and
constant
if
talks
necessary,
about what
National
about
Guard
the
create a
second
perimeter,
vehicle?
around that area to
There's
make
going to
sure
be
no car got through that
so
perimeter
much shit said
without
on
being checked, because
Senate
we
conservative
certainly don't want to see a
circles,
second
particularly
explosive-laden car going
about
next to
that.
a school, a crowded area, and inflicting enormous damage. So the second thing is, who were these people? That's going to be harder to determine because of the nature of the explosion. But we want to know, were they in fact terrorists, and were they affiliated with any group? And do they have other known connections, either in New York or anywhere in the United States? The critical thing here is to prevent
Morpheus
another attack.
commented
and that is something that
below the
requires,
video. Terror attack.
leadership,
Pretty reports that carbon bomb went off at
tremendous
the border
allocation of
guard station.
and
Not
the
sure if
diligence
casualty
and
count. See
vigilance
smoke
of the
everywhere.
people as
Real
well.
shit show.
Yeah, and lastly, Governor, I
Bastard
just want to get
terrorists
your
treat
check
us at the
because there's
northern
been
flank.
some
First wave,
conflicting
like we pointed
reporting
out.
on whether the land border
that's
crossings in
possible.
this area, the Niagara Falls area,
My
have all been
position
shut down,
is,
all 4 bridges. Some say they have all been shut
stay-
down. Some say they
stay aware of
are
your
going through
surroundings.
secure scrutiny. If you were in this position,
If something
would you, for the
doesn't
time
feel
being, make sure those
trust
border
your gut.
crossings were shut down until we know more?
Absolutely. I'd shut down the 4 Western New York border crossings until we determine who these people were. Was it a terrorist attack? Is there a second vehicle? It's just too great a risk, particularly at this time when we're going into a holiday tomorrow, to allow those bridges to be open.
Yeah, former New York Governor George Pataki, great to have you on as always, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Trace.
Meantime, New York City Mayor Eric Adams says he is closely monitoring the situation, and NYPD officers already on their way upstate to help out. He says the city, the mayor we're talking about, is on heightened alert because of the upcoming holiday, and people will see extra security across the city. Let's bring in Nicole Parker, former FBI special agent. She has done a lot of work with us, and her insight is always exceptional. Nicole, your thoughts on what's happening up there? We have kind of narrowed this down. It appears that all the evidence says that this car was in the New York side, on the United States side, all the while, and that it was, according to some reports, going toward this bridge, going toward this checkpoint at a high rate of speed before it either somehow exploded or crashed and exploded. What's your takeaway?
Right. There's a lot of questions that are going to be investigated at this point. I think it's important to note that just yesterday, the day before, the governor of New York was discussing that there was chatter and potential intel stating that there could be terrorist attacks. And of course, everyone initially is going to New York City. That is the #1 target for terrorism in the United States. I was there on September 11th. I saw what happened to the World Trade Center. but it was not limited to just New York City. And in that intel report, it talked about how it could be other targets within the state of New York. You're seeing it right now. This is in upstate New York near the, Niagara Falls Canadian border. This is a very high traffic area for tourists. It's important to note who did this. We don't know who did this, obviously, but that's something that we're going to be looking at closely. Investigators are going to be looking at and trying to identify who was it that did this. This could be a lone wolf offender, a lone actor, or it could be someone that's part of a foreign terrorist organization group. But to make it speculation right now would be, irresponsible. But yeah, there will be no stone left unturned. Federal, state, and local law enforcement is going to be looking at this.
In the early going, Nicole, we were hearing these reports that what happened was this car pulled into the initial checkpoint, the initial screening, and then was flagged for secondary. And when it got to the secondary position, that's when the car exploded. Turns out that's not the activity. And it appears at that point, you could always make the excuse, well, there was panic. And when they got to the secondary thing, they detonated the car. Now it appears that this thing was going at a high rate of speed, that it was off the bridge. It was at a 7-Eleven. It was going toward the bridge at a high rate of speed. And then it hit a fence and then exploded. So the question would be, what was the target? Was the target on the Canadian side? Was the target the U.S. side? What are your senses telling you the target was in this case?
You know what? That's a very important question. And at this point, I am not sure what the target was, and it's going to take more investigation. But what's important to note is you said that the car was at the 7-Eleven. There will be a very thorough investigation, backtracking where that car and vehicle came from, identifying what the tag was, looking at the video surveillance, seeing where it came, if there was a toll tag on it, identifying what the car was based on if there was any video surveillance at the 7-Eleven, and backtracking who the owner of the car was. That is the most important thing, is identifying who was it. Were they like I said, part of a foreign terrorist organization group? Are they a lone offender? Are they a U.S. citizen? Where are they from? What was their intention? But this is important for Americans. When they say there are warnings, this is serious, and there are warnings happening, and we are on high alert for potential terrorist attacks. You have to keep your head on a swivel, and no one is safe. You've got to be aware, and they could use a vehicle. I was just speaking about it yesterday. Vehicles, bridges, mass transit. This could happen anywhere, and so you've got to be on high alert.
And
top of talking about the issue that was happening at Western New York here near Niagara Falls. I do want to play out right now just some brief comments from the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking on this.
Niagara Falls. There was a vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge crossing. I've been briefed by the NSIA and the Minister of Public Safety. CBSA, RCMP, and Transport Canada are all fully engaged in providing the necessary support. There are a lot of questions, and we are following up to try and get as many answers as rapidly as possible. We are in close contact with U.S. officials, and we'll continue to work closely with them. We will continue to be engaged. We will provide updates. Updates I can give right now is there are 4 border border crossings that are right now closed: Rainbow Bridge, Whirlpool Bridge, Queenston Bridge, and Peace Bridge. Additional measures are being contemplated and activated at all border crossings across the country. We are taking this extraordinarily seriously. And Mr. Speaker, I will have to excuse myself now to go get further updates and work on this very serious situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
All right, that, of course, that was the brief update right there. We want to continue to give you the latest right here on Live Now from Fox. We'll continue to monitor this breaking news story. We are going to step away for another 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come on Live Now.
Fuck it all. Ugh, no, Jamie WB. I'm an idiot, and I probably have had myself muted when I was trying to answer a Teabag and Therapist question. For the love of God. Okay. No, wasn't you. I'm just now realizing that I was muted. So, one of the things that I was saying here is Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. There's already discussions about how they've been so apparently this was a second. This is one of those places like if they pull you out of line, this is where they would take you. This is the secondary inspection area that they would take you if they wanted to look at your vehicle further or something. I'm assuming that's what they mean by secondary inspection area. So apparently, according to CNN, car that exploded at border was on a local road on U.S. side, suddenly started moving at a high rate of speed, hit a curb, and then flew over a barrier across the road and landed on a secondary inspection area at border station. But one of the things that I was saying here, is there's already reports about how they're looking for a second vehicle. You guys, in my Rumble chats, that is all I'm ever going to hear about. It's like when there's a mass shooting. User has been banned for naughty words. Terrorist attack on the northern border. That's what it's looking like. I don't think how it could be. I don't see how it could be anything else at this point. It looks like a duck. It walks like a duck. It's probably not a cow. But when there's a mass shooting, okay? And there's always initial confusion about how many shooters there were. There may be some confusion about what they looked like. Here you can see the extent of damage. As I was saying earlier, there was just that one specific building and a car that looks like they're damaged. It does not look like to any of the supporting structure that there was all that much damage. But that's all I'm going to hear about in my Rumble chat for days. 4 days. There was obviously a fucking car, and they're covering up. And I'm just going to be wanting to pull my hair out because as far as we know, that is your speculation. And the authorities have to look at everything. And no matter what, everybody in my chat is going to be, oh yeah, there was a second car and they're covering it up, and I'm going to be seeing it everywhere on every conservative that I follow, and they're going to be driving me all fucking insane. Teabag and Therapist Ray Epps did it. Ooga booga feds. Yep, that's the other thing that I'm going to be hearing left and right, and going to be wanting to fucking pull my hair out of my mouth. But I just have to accept as a moderate MAGA that this is what I'm going to see. And I don't know, ooga booga over on Rumble. Yeah, I mean, you could be right. It could be feds. Or it just could be the fact that there are people out there who hate America. And it's not just the feds. Ugh. So let's see here. Photo after reports of innocent involved vehicle coming in the U.S. border on the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls. Holco says, being briefed on incident, all 4 international bridge crossings between U.S., Canada, and Western New York closed. And that makes a good idea. So that was 2 hours ago. There was some initial confusion about whether or not, what was closed and what isn't. But for sure, all the Western New York ones on the U.S.-Canada border are closed. It was Teabag and Therapist. It was Castro Trudeau's little lesser-known brother in blackface. Teabag and Therapist, I hate you. Well, a bunch of people have crossed the southern border, so who knows? Well, that's from Jamie WV on Rumble. Yeah, and I totally get that, but it has been discussed recently, and this was something that Vivek Ramaswamy was trying to expose and warn people about. It's not just the southern fucking border that is a problem. Our northern border is also incredibly porous. There are places with pathways and walkways that there's nothing that prevents you from going in, and there are issues with people crossing that border as well. And they're not getting caught. He went and he talked to people there. So we get it from both sides, and that's part of the problem. Did it mention which way they were coming? They were going? Nope, it's not Canada. It's a commie nation allied with China. T-back and therapists. They're coming from all over. If that's what you're... What? Did it mention which way they were going? They were coming from the U.S. into Canada. So that's at least the direction that the vehicle was going. I'm not sure what exactly you mean. So let's go back to some live views here of Niagara Falls, the border crossing. As you can see, a lot of activity going on there right now. Well, I'm saying Canada is aligned with China more, and that they don't vet anyone. Really, they are just as bad with letting in anyone. Teabag and therapist. That's fair. I can concede that point. I'm trying to share my screen. Holy hell! There we go. There. Live view. As you can see, lots going on there. We might have sound on this.
Claiming 2 people dead in an attempted terror attack near Niagara Falls.
To me, I don't get what is
this is at the Rainbow Bridge location of the border crossing between Canada and the U.S. here. So Fox News sources claiming that the 2 people dead were inside the vehicle. Still very, very fluid situation as it all unfolds right now here on Live Now from Fox. I do want to continue to give you the latest updates all in real time as we do wait for those to happen. I do want to play out the UN Security Council briefing talking about the matters in Israel and Hamas as we take a continued live look here at some of the shots at Rainbow Bridge.
The bombs and the siege, those arbitrarily detained, and all those suffering from occupation and racial discrimination, apartheid. We have a few days to mobilize to stop the war against the Palestinian people, and we have a very narrow window to advance peace. We cannot continue being driven away from it. Mr. President, what will we tell this generation of youth that has gone through multiple wars, surviving one to endure the next, who kept clinging to life, trying to find a way towards a better future? We owe them to do better.
All right, everyone, I do want to go out to a live look that we are getting right now at the Rainbow Bridge. Let's listen in right here. Looks like a news conference of some sort will be happening. Let's listen right here on Live Now.
To the bridge itself, and that it was really just contained to that. building where they had a secondary
I
area,
work for Grayline,
and
we're
that
laid
there
off
looked like
this
there might
time
have
of
been a
year.
vehicle that was
There was
damaged
two
as well.
witnesses I know, myself and another guy, and I came down to the One Niagara building to see how the sales guy was doing. And I closed the door to my car, and about 30 feet from me, I seen something airborne. I first thought it was an airplane. It looked like slow motion. And I said, my God, it's a car. And it's a vehicle, and it's flying through the air. He hit the concrete barrier probably right at the signal, God knows how many thousands of feet before the bridge. It went airborne. The vehicle began to turn sideways and went under something overhead, and then it hit something over there. And my prayer was just, please don't let any of the officers, get hit over there. And then all of a sudden, black smoke, no explosion. We all heard, the people in the building heard it, the metal on metal. Then all of a sudden I saw black smoke and then fire. There was no explosion, just the black smoke. And then there was so much smoke, it was unbelievable. After a while,
to me,
probably
it
took
looked like it
5
actually
minutes for
exploded
law
from the
enforcement to
video
get
that
here.
we shared.
But that's exactly what happened.
How fast did you estimate that he was going?
Well, the other fella, the guy that drives the cab, says he thinks he was doing 100 miles an hour coming down this street here. But to me, it was like slow motion when the vehicle was up in the air. And he was just airborne. I can't imagine how it got that high up. So he had to be doing quite a speed for that to happen.
What was going through your mind?
Pardon me?
How were you feeling?
It was like a movie. It's strange because I can play it in my mind very fast or in slow motion. And it's like a movie. I'm saying, oh my, and then all of a sudden I see a vehicle. It looked like an SUV, but who knows what I saw, but it was a vehicle and it was in the air.
How close would you say it was to where the bridge inspectors would be?
When the vehicle went airborne, it was down by this signal. It hit something like a concrete thing that goes on an angle, and then it went up. It was up in the air, and it started to turn sideways, and then it went in. At that point, I was just praying that it didn't hit any of the Border Patrol officers.
So you didn't see it actually strike where their booths are or anything like that, or?
It went underneath, and then metal hitting metal. That's exactly
I'm going to
what
be
I heard.
here in the background
It was
doing
metal
some
on metal.
things. I got to use the
Where
restroom.
were you at the time?
I was right
It
across
basically
the street.
just above
There's
the
One
underwear
Niagara
bomber
building
guy.
directly across
LOL,
the
that
street.
one, no
It
one
was like
died,
it was
and he
50
just
feet
burnt his
away
twig
from
and
me,
berry.
but that's
So
exactly what
Lamau.
happened. That car did not get on
I
top.
don't remember
It
that
was
one.
airborne.
Were the
It
flames
almost
shooting
looks
up in the sky?
more
No,
a fuel
it
tank
was
boom
black
caused by
smoke,
someone
and
not
then,
using enough explosives.
they weren't shooting up. It was like
I mean, to me, that video looked
like a bonfire or
something
something like that.
actually
Then they eventually did
exploded
get higher. They
after
started
he
out
hit it.
low, and then the
But
flame got
from
bigger
his
and bigger,
from wherever
and
that
then
guy
it
was
went down,
standing,
and
it
by
could have
that
looked
time,
very
the
different.
fire department. Then I think they wanted everybody out of the area.
Could you see how many people were actually in the vehicle?
No, I could not see how many were in there. It was just airborne. The only thing I remember is it turned sideways and then hit over there. And at that point, don't let it hit anybody else. So this is the truth.
What did you do after the fact? Were you just standing there in shock?
I'm still a little bit shaky. Sorry about that. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just like something you see in Hollywood or something. And it's strange because I can replay it either in slow motion or fast. But it looked at that point when the vehicle was in the air, it was like it was moving 30 or 40 miles an hour.
And how did you happen to be here?
I came down. We're seasonal tour guides, and we get laid off in the winter. So I came down here to talk to the sales guy just to see how things are going, rather than stay home and get bigger than I already am. Just to come down and shoot the breeze. I've been a guide here in Niagara Falls for 15 years.
Have you spoken to Homeland Security? Did they interview you at all?
Yes, the FBI came to my house. I gave them a statement. And then finally, but before I gave them a statement, because I gave the officer my license, and he said, I said, if I can help you, he took my license, my name and number. I'm seeing all this stuff on the news that was inaccurate. And the news had already called me, but then they just called. I just had an interview with them. They came to my house maybe 35, 40 minutes ago.
Can you spell your first and last name again?
Ricky, Rickie Wilson.
And that was the FBI that interviewed you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
They didn't say not to talk to anybody, but I'm seeing all this stuff that's inaccurate. This is exactly what I saw. There is cameras. I informed them on some of the One Niagara inside, and they should be able to play footage back. but that's what I seen.
I mean, given all your years being a tour guide down here, is this just unlike anything you've ever seen?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Other than we get people from all over the world who use some interesting stuff, but we love it. Yep, 15 years. So I'm glad I could help you guys out. There was only 2 witnesses that I know of, me and this other guy, but there were 2 other fellas there. I think they were from Turkey, and they were saying they were seeing somebody kept circling, going in circles, perhaps arguing with somebody in a car. I don't know. All I seen is it go through the air. And
it was definitely on this side of the border.
it was on this side. Yes, sir. Yes, it was. Right over there by the light. It hit that cement thing. I'm assuming it hit the cement because I seen all the debris. But I mean, how did it get up there? I mean, this thing was up in the air. I know it sounds like I'm crazy, but the car was airborne. And not 3 or 4 feet. I mean, up there.
Ricky, the fact that this is all happening, you know, the day before Thanksgiving, busiest travel day, you know, one of them of the year, does that make this a little bit harder?
When people don't know what's going on, of course. That's why I'm down here to tell you exactly what I seen. I don't know what happened. All I know is that vehicle was 10, 15 feet in the air before it hit the building. And probably right by that, somewhere around that light. It's just hard to believe. It's just, you know, I have no reason to make anything up or anything. It's a miracle I'm doing this well in front of all these cameras. Of course, I was a disc jockey years ago, but that's another story. Anything else I can answer for you?
Anything else?
I don't know. It got to the border, and there's an overhead thing. And by that time, the vehicle started to come down, and it went underneath it. It had to have, because it would have taken that out. And then it kind of like disappeared out of range a little bit, but I know it just beyond that, it hit one of the things where the security officers are. And I'm just thanking God for answered prayer that none of the Border Patrol guys, one fella I heard was injured, but I'm only here to let you know the facts of what really happened, what I saw.
Ricky, thank you.
Thank you,
We're
Ricky.
glad you're okay and you're safe.
Yes, I do. I'm on 8000 Porter Road, Lot 6, Niagara Falls, New York.
Said there were inaccurate media reports. Could you explain a little bit about?
Well, one of the reports I heard was the vehicle came from Canada, came over here and blew up, and that's not accurate. So I'm glad I could help you. I would have hung around there. I did give the police my information, and they just kind of wanted everybody. There wasn't a lot of
Whiskey
people
going to
here.
Alta. What are
I know
you
there was
talking
people in the
about?
building, and it
I
kind
don't
of,
know.
shook
In
when
other
the
less
metal hit the
important
metal.
news
It wasn't
here,
an explosion because
I
there was
have
metal on
something
metal.
called Simply
And then
Spiked.
people started
It's
to come out of the building, like, what happened?
fruity
And I had
flavored
said to the
alcohol
sales guy,
drinks.
I said, my God, I said,
I
this
have
car just
the
went flying
signature
through the-
peach
looked
flavor,
like an SUV.
and I
It
have the
looked like-
mango
maybe I'm
peach.
wrong,
Those
but it
two I
looked
have
like a
not
black
tried
vehicle.
yet.
I-
And I'm
I-
wondering what you all
my
think that I
first
should
thought
try.
was
Should
a
I try the
plane,
mango
but
peach
That wasn't.
or just their
But it was-
signature?
I don't know how he got that high up. I really don't.
Well, we're glad you're okay and you're safe, given that you're so many feet away.
Yeah, it's a miracle. But I'm glad I could come down and
All right, this was Ricky, a tour guide in
Whiskey
Canada,
Horn Alta.
claims he's one
I
of
don't
the
know.
witnesses here that saw the situation unfold right now. And of
Rumble's a
course,
little
it's
bit more
very, very fluid. The type of information that we are getting
free with
in
what
at right
they
now, and
allow you
he
to
just
say
described a situation where the car
and
was
what they don't
going
allow you to
not
say.
from Canada into the U.S., but
Just
U.S.
be careful.
into Canada there. So that is from his point of view and his perspective there. We are continuing to wait
reference to
for more updates from
violence
officials. Obviously,
what you
during a
want to
breaking
happen
news
violently.
event like this, things
want
and
my channel to be held
moments come in
responsible for
very sporadically, and they come in sometimes very fast. And
Mango
it's hard to
sounds
sometimes,
good.
ascertain
Says Jamie
all of the
WV,
information in
signature
real time.
first.
So that is why we are
Signature.
saying right now it is an
Yeah,
incident that happened on the Rainbow Bridge in at the New York Canadian border there, and we'll continue to follow it for you right here on Live Now from Fox. We're actually taking our final break here of this hour. Stay right here with us. More to come, and we'll continue to follow this situation that plays out on the New York-Canada border.
I'm attempting to try to go live on TikTok, and I know how you all probably feel about TikTok. For some reason, Sky News we can't hear. I don't know why Sky News did not have sound on. I've got to be careful with this one because like music plays and YouTube won't like me. Well, let's find out if TikTok is going to let me go live. I've heard a couple of different things. Like at one point, their system that you downloaded, it wanted you to have 1,000 followers, and so I did the dirty thing of buying 1,000 followers. I guess I'm gonna do Signature Peach. Y'all aren't saying much, so I'm gonna do Signature Peach. I mean, I'm not a big on alcohol, the flavor of alcohol, but Signature Peach isn't so bad. So, but there's a possibility that they may say that I don't have 10,000 followers. So it's a possibility that they still won't let me do it. But let's see here. Because I think it would be a really great thing to be able to go live on TikTok, believe it or not. And while also encouraging that to, hey, come over here. Come over to Rumble. But let's see. They have this whole system that they want you to download. I'm getting told my account does not exist. Okay. That's not America First of. Okay. I wrote my thing wrong here. I put America First on TikTok instead of America First of TikTok. So. Okay, so we're logging into Live Studio. Let's see what's going to happen here. Maybe for the first time ever, I'm going to get to go. So this guy
The office is on metal. Then all of a sudden I saw black smoke and then fire. There was no explosion, just the black smoke. And then there was so much smoke, it was unbelievable. After a while, it probably took 5 minutes for law enforcement to get here. But that's exactly what happened.
How fast did you estimate that he was going?
Well, the other fella, the guy that drives the cab, says he thinks he was doing 100 miles an hour coming down this street here. But to me,
Ooh,
it
my
was like slow
application is
motion when
approved
the
for
vehicle
7
was up in the
days.
air. And he was just airborne. I
Interesting.
can't imagine how it got that high up. So he had to be doing quite a speed for that to happen.
How are you
What was
feeling?
going through your mind?
Pardon me?
How are you feeling?
It
about that?
was like a movie. It's strange because I can play it in my mind very fast or in slow motion. And it's like a movie. I'm saying, oh my, and then all of a sudden I see a vehicle. It looked like an SUV, but who knows what I saw, but it was a vehicle and it was in the air.
How close would you say it was to where the bridge inspectors would be?
When the vehicle went airborne, it was down by this signal. It hit something like a concrete thing that goes on an angle, and then it went up. It was up in the air, and it started to turn sideways, and then it went in. At that point, I was just praying that it didn't hit any of the Border Patrol officers.
So you didn't see it actually like strike where their booths are or anything like that, or?
It went underneath, and then metal hitting metal. That's exactly what I heard. It was metal on metal.
Where were you at the time?
I was right across the street. There's the One Niagara building directly across the street. It was like it was 50 feet away from me, but that's exactly what happened. That car did not get on top. It was airborne.
Were the flames shooting up in the sky?
No, it was black smoke, and then they weren't shooting up. It was like a bonfire or something like that. Then they eventually did get higher. They started out low, and then the flame got bigger and bigger, and then it went down. And by that time, the fire department, then I think they wanted everybody out of the area.
Could you see how many people were actually in the vehicle?
No, I could not see how many were in there. It was just airborne. The only thing I remember is it turned sideways and then hit over there. And at that point, don't let it hit anybody else. So this is the truth.
What did you do after the fact? Were you just standing there in shock?
I'm still a little bit shaky. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just like something you see in Hollywood or something. And it's strange because I can replay it either in slow motion or fast. But it looked at that point when the vehicle was in the air, it was like it was moving 30 or 40 miles an hour.
And how did you happen to be here?
I came down. We're seasonal tour guides, and we get laid off in the winter. I came down here to talk to the sales guy just to see how things are going, rather than stay home and get bigger than I am. Just to come down and shoot the breeze. I've been a guide here in Niagara Falls for 15 years.
Have you spoken to Homeland Security? Did they interview you at all?
Yes, the FBI came
Well, TikTok doesn't like my
in my house. I gave them a statement, and then finally, but before I gave them a statement, because I gave the officer
Maybe it's
my
because
license,
I'm
and he said,
currently
I said, if I can help you, he took my license, my name and number. I'm seeing all this stuff on the news that was inaccurate.
Yeah, a lot
and
of that is
the
being
news had already called me, but then they just called. I just had an interview with them. They came to my house 35, 40 minutes ago.
Can you spell your first and last name again?
Ricky, R-I-C-K.
That was the FBI that interviewed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
They didn't say not to inaccurate. This is exactly what I saw.
Apparently, I
All right,
could
so
switch
you're
over to
hearing from
5G,
Ricky,
and I did
who
not
says
realize
he's
that.
a witness of what happened here at the border, and
I
of
didn't
course,
think
we're
that
going to be
my
learning a lot more here in the hours to come.
laptop
Right
on
now,
this other
is all
was set up
still
to do that.
very active, very fluid. We're bringing you this information as we can here at Live Now from Fox, always walking you through all of the different live images, tweets, things that we're seeing on social media, and taking it to you live here as we watch it happen in real time. Again, I'm Lexi Petrovich here on the desk right now. We have a lot to get to as we continue to follow all of the developments here. We want to bring in right now Joe Thompson, who is a former NYPD officer. He joins us now. Joe, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to pull up a tweet.
So it
here
has a
right
lot
now.
of
This is
settings
from
here that I
the
don't
White House
really
Press
know anything
Secretary
about.
Karine Jean-Pierre. She says the president has been briefed on the vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge port of entry. He and his team are closely following
setting a stream
developments.
latency
Joe,
will
you've been following all of these developments as
synchronously
well,
delay your
alongside us and all
live
of our viewers here.
audio.
Tell us where you think things stand based on what you've seen.
Codec
in
compatibility
your
mode.
former
Try turning it on if
job.
the screen turns green.
Well, I think
I'm gonna turn
the
that
first
on
thing I'm
just
thinking of is we have to really be cautious here on the direction that this seemed to have started out in and the way that it's going right now. I mean, there's still a lot of facts that we have to pull in from this case. The investigators that are on the ground have a lot of work to do before they kind of figure out and get a handle and grip of exactly what happened here. I did hear initial reports of a terror attack with explosives in the vehicle, and now we have witnesses saying that there was no explosive seen in the vehicle. So, there's going to be a lot of investigative work that's going to have to go into this before we can jump to
access
any
to
conclusions.
live
The last
video
thing we want to
is
do is
updates. To
cause
review the
create,
access, you need to
create
meet
alarm and panic
the
out
access
there
requirements
for
such as
something
going
that may
live
be
more than
completely
25
not what
minutes
it
at
is.
least 2 times.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime that
That's
there are
not going to be a problem for
sources
me.
that are involved in a story, you and I both know how that can go. In many cases, sources can be 100% right. And in other cases, they could think that they know something very well and feel very confident about it, but it might turn out not to be true. And 1,000%, we are going to
Manage your
continue to
sources
follow
and
the facts
scenes.
and hear from officials here as we
Manage your
continue to
sources
get
and
more
scenes on the panel to the left of
information.
your
In the
screen. You can
meantime, we
choose
do
either
know that
portrait
there
or
was an
landscape. Your
explosion there that
changes.
happened at the border. So, Joe, I guess what are you hoping to hear in the next couple of hours here? What do you think the next bit of information we'll be getting is?
Well, they're obviously going to speak to every witness that was out there. They're going to review all cameras that they can find. They're going to try to get to the bottom of whether or not this was a terror attack or something other than that, just some lone wolf type of deal, or just a car exploding after going a high rate of speed and crashing into a barrier. So again, the investigation I predict is going to change a couple times as the investigators are out there and gathering evidence and information from witnesses. So we're going to have to just kind of sit back and wait and see what they find. But in the meantime, as a country itself, we're going to have to tighten up our belts here.
I'm getting
I was a 9/11 first responder. I worked in the NYPD. I was a detective there. We take terror very, very seriously, and we monitor the world stage and what's going on. And we're always looking at things that are happening, whether it's something that's going to turn into a terror attack or maybe it's something else. It's an eye-opener for sure for all law enforcement.
We have seen, and we're trying to get our hands on this video too. It's on Fox News right now. They've been showing some surveillance video that they're getting now from the border where this happened. So I'm curious to hear how a video like that that's showing this happening from a surveillance perspective, how that could help the officials as they investigate this and try to determine if this was a terror attack or not.
Well, that's also going to be something they're going to have to look at, what type of cameras there are, how close they can actually zoom in with the cameras. They're probably not going to be able to see in the vehicle, I mean, to be honest with you, from a camera perspective. But what they will be able to see is if this person did accelerate at a high rate of speed after passing what I was told was a security checkpoint, and there was a second security checkpoint that they were allegedly heading to. They'll see if they accelerated to a high rate of speed and maybe the type of explosion that happened at the end. They'll review it. They'll see. They'll probably bring on some experts just to maybe give them a grip on what happens when a vehicle hits a barrier at possibly 80, 90 miles an hour. Is this type of an explosion that would mimic that? That's all stuff that's going to be looked at to try to get to the bottom of this. And then the evidence that's on the ground now. I know that I've been hearing that the car is basically disintegrated, but there will still be evidence there and traces for them to look at to see if there was any type of explosive in the car, other than obviously the gasoline that it's fueled by.
Yeah, and this is a time too when everyone is really on high alert. We're a day out from Thanksgiving. We're in the holiday swing. People are traveling. They are on the roads. They are in the skies. Everyone is very much on high alert ahead of Thanksgiving and really into the end of the year. This comes especially at a time that we've seen really a lot of division across the country, of course, Joe, too, with the war still ongoing and differences in opinions and whatnot. So how have you seen New York City in particular really ramp up patrols? We've seen that before for big events, anytime there's a big parade, a big holiday, but now especially to have an incident like this, in addition to that, how have you seen things really pick up?
Well, in New York City, we're always on guard. That's something we don't take lightly here in New York City. So every parade, everything that you see going on in the city, every major event is always going to have top-notch security. And when they see stuff like this again, they monitor everything going on in a world stage. The NYPD has a broader scope than what most people actually think. We have detectives all over the world that monitor this stuff from abroad and report back to our intelligence. And we get the best and the most accurate information that's out there. So watching this is just another thing. They're going to be monitoring it just the way we are now. They'll get all the inside facts on what actually happened here and how they can prepare themselves with the Thanksgiving Day parade and some of the big events that are coming up in New York City. Again, New York City is a prime target for terror. I mean, we all know that, very highly populated. But the way that the NYPD patrols it, it's top notch, and it's not a soft target by any stretch of the imagination. We make it very difficult. I mean, we cover all the bases when it comes to protecting New York City.
Absolutely. And we can see this video that we're getting in here. We're getting a couple of different perspectives. Obviously, a ton of law enforcement. There seems to be a ton of people who are on top of this very breaking and fluid scene here. Joe, talk to us about just the response that they likely got in a situation like this in a very busy place with people commuting over the holiday week and weekend.
Yeah, well, immediately the thought is going to be terror, and that's natural, and that's the way it should go, because we have to rule that out first. So the FBI will immediately, their field office will immediately get notified and respond to that location. Their investigative teams, their evidence response teams will all be on scene. They'll be picking through this scene piece by piece, again, trying to figure out if this was an actual terror incident or just two lunatics in a car that decided to drive into a barrier. I mean, it's going to be
it's a terrorist attack.
that black or white,
I agree.
so to speak, until we find out more details about the occupants of this vehicle, which I've been told are deceased. They're going to try to figure out who the owner of the vehicle is and who these occupants are, and they're going to go and they're going to go and
this. I really don't.
do what they normally do with these people. They're going to go to their homes. They're going to go get out search warrants and look through all their stuff and find out if they were parts of any associate terror organizations. And again, you see what's going on the world stage here, and that's something that we really have to look at. I'm not saying that this is not a terror attack, but
Whether or not
I'm experienced enough to know that we have to wait till we get some more facts in to say for sure that this was an actual terror attack. I mean, of course, just like any normal person, when I watched this, the first thing I thought of was, well, we're heavily engaged over there right now in Israel, and with Hamas there, and then Iran is involved. The first thing I think of is there's going to be some sort of a terror link to this. But again, we don't know that for sure yet, and they're going to be doing everything they possibly can to try to
I think it's
either,
totally
rule that out, or,
hilarious that I'm like
basically try to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, when you look at the timeline too, obviously anytime there's a breaking news situation like this, we are waiting to hear from officials, waiting for them to gather enough information to be able to tell us so that we can inform the public with the bare minimum at the very least. So what do you think the timeline will look like for us here? Do you think we will have a clear idea if this was a terror attack or not in the next couple of hours?
Yeah, I believe they're going to be working on this fast and furious, especially if it wasn't a terror attack. They want to get that information out, because right now, in most people's minds,
and whether or not people can actually hear me.
We're under attack. And again, myself included, the first thing I thought of was, this could be terror related. And to be honest with you, to kind of go into something else, my first thought is that, our borders have been open for the last three years or so. I mean, how many people have come in here that we don't know about? So, I've already been thinking about the terror aspect on this when it comes to the world stage and what's going on already, because in 9/11, these people came in here and they planned this out for years before they actually hit us. And that's the same type of thing that I think of when I see something like this. And I'm hoping that that's not the case. And, the investigators, the FBI is very well capable of being able to rule this out. I'm sure that time is of the essence with them to try to get the news out that it was not, in fact, a terror attack, if that's the case.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be hearing from them very soon here. We'll be taking viewers out to that as soon as we see anybody step up. We also, though, Joe, are, of course, seeing how this is going to be impacting people who are trying to get to and from location to location ahead of Thanksgiving tomorrow. This here, a statement from the Buffalo Airport saying in response to the incident that's unfolding at the Rainbow Bridge, the NFTA is increasing security system-wide. Cars coming into the Buffalo Airport will undergo security checks. Travelers can expect additional screenings. The Buffalo Niagara Falls airports are fully operational. We advise travelers to give themselves time for these extra precautions in addition to holiday travel. And Joe, safety, of course, is always the priority here, but we all know how hectic it is just in general to travel around the holidays. And then you take into account all of this extra safety that's being put in, which of course is a good thing, especially when you're weighing what's happening right now. But how complicated does that make things, especially for people who are traveling through this area ahead of tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the ripple effect is going to be felt throughout the entire country with this until we know the facts of this case. Everybody is going to look at in law enforcement, we always side with caution. We're always going to make sure that people are safe first. If we don't know the facts of this case, we're going to treat it as if it was a terror attack and that there could be many more of them. So I expect delays. I mean, this is the worst possible time, and my heart goes out to everybody who's trying to travel to family and everybody right now during Thanksgiving. You know, it's going to be mayhem and the airports at the crossings, you know, but you have to understand it's for a reason. We went through it after 9/11 with the bridges and tunnels and the airports, and everything was high, you know, we were on high alert, and we have to be. We have to protect the people from, God forbid, another one of these attacks, whatever it is, lone wolf or an affiliated
I might have it
organization.
here.
But they are going to side with caution, and they're certainly going to tighten everything up. And like I said, I can only, you know, give my heartfelt feelings out to the people that are ready to travel for this holiday season. They're going to be going through some pain during this travel time.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, for this to be happening in a place like New York, we know that there are so many activities, things that are planned for a holiday weekend like Thanksgiving. Do you think that this will have potentially any impact on some of those scheduled events?
Well, I could tell you from being in New York, we don't like to change anything that we do event-wise, because we don't want to give in to the terror. We don't want to bow down to them as if they won. So what we'll do is we'll tighten up security even more.
All right, looks like we got something
we
here.
already. I can't go into details about how we secure New York City, but the level of security in New York City is
Hello to
extreme,
everyone on
and
TikTok.
they'll only make it even better for an event like this after an incident like this occurred. You know, every event that we watch that happens as a terror event in our country that happens, we learn from, and we're able to actually adapt to it and keep people safe. So there will be nothing that changes with the event itself, except for maybe some more security checkpoints and stuff
There
like
have
that.
been at least
as
2
far as,
people dead after a
the regular
car
population goes.
Yeah, and Joe, we
flipped
appreciate
over a
having
barrel
you on here because you're
and
able to
exploded
offer such a
either
great perspective on what we're seeing
minutes
and what we're learning as we
or
watch this stuff
because
that many of us can't really speak to.
that's just sometimes what
That comes
happens
to
when
mind as
things
we're watching all of these different live images come
crash
in,
into things. They
showing you
sometimes
different
explode.
statements that we're getting from the FBI, that we're getting from the airport. Anything else that stands out to you about where things stand right now?
Nothing in particular, because of what I'm seeing, what you're seeing right now. I'm waiting to get some information myself to try to figure out in my own mind what I think might have happened. But we're going to have to wait like everybody else until they come to. It was not an affiliated terror attack, meaning that not associated with one of these large terror groups. It's bad enough that we get these lone wolf attacks; they do just as much damage. But at the same time, we don't want it to be affiliated with something that's a worldwide terror organization. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'm predicting that it's going to happen fairly quickly. If it's not a terror attack, they want to get that information out as soon as possible. If it was, you know, they're going to have to release some more details about it, and that's going to eventually have the ripple effect even more around the country about tightening up some of our soft targets around the country, especially around the holidays. But until then, we'll just have to do a wait and see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. All of this very quickly developing here. So we really appreciate having you on to be able to walk through it with us. Thanks so much.
Pleasure anytime. Happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. Thank you. Stay safe.
You too.
All right, so we're going to continue bringing on guests here as we follow this.
So yeah,
breaking
we're
news
live on
scene,
TikTok
getting
right now.
several
This is pretty
different live
cool.
Images in. We have another camera view that we've also been keeping our eyes on here, as well as more of an overhead shot too of this border situation that is unfolding. If you're just joining us, thanks for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. We're always bringing everything to you live, raw, and unfiltered. Upstate New York border crossings right now closed after this explosion that happened. And right now, we're trying to get clarity on if this could have been a terror attack. We've heard reports from sources that it potentially could be. We're also hearing things that this was not. So obviously a lot of confusion. Our job here is not to confuse you further. We want to take you through all of the facts as we're taking you through.
I just really don't understand the confusion that this is a terrorist attack.
Wait to see and wait to hear from officials as they hopefully clarify exactly what happened here very soon. Obviously, a lot to piece together, hearing from witnesses, hearing from people who are in the area, as well as combing through some of that surveillance video.
That to me does not
and
make
talking with
sense
as
at
many
all.
people as they can about exactly what happened. But we do know 2 people have died in this
Like-
explosion. And we had heard reports that an officer was injured as well at the time that this happened. So we're going to keep monitoring this for you and
Honestly, if
taking
they
you
try to
through
say
it
that, I
live
might be
as we
questioning
always
it.
do. Let's step away for our first commercial break and bring you more of this coverage in just 2 minutes.
Because that just seems silly. I mean, I'm sorry. But not sorry. Because, like, ooga booga, we should have tons of terrorist terrorists. That's weird. We don't. We spent 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq killing Muslims. Well, in my opinion, we don't know for sure. Possibly, you know, it's hard to say what it is that we possibly don't get told. You know, I'm just saying. That we don't know what we don't know. That's how I look at it. I look at it like we can assume absolutely nothing. When it really comes to these sort of things. So let's play. Hmm.
We're keeping an eye on all of
I
these.
think it's
different
possible that there's a
images
lot
we're getting
more
in
that
right now. Let's show you another one that we're
happens
also
than
seeing from
what we know.
overhead. You can just see a ton of law enforcement
And
presence.
you know,
We've
that's
also
kind of a
been
scary
seeing
thought
different
in and of
angles
itself.
this too, watching everything happen in real time. And again, what we know is that this was an explosion. This prompted the closing of border crossings in the area. So everyone working very closely to figure out the cause of this, how this happened. Obviously, in general, many cities, let alone in a state like New York, are on high alert ahead of the holidays. Terror threats are nothing that law enforcement takes lightly. As we know, we just spoke with Joe Thompson, former NYPD officer, about that and how instantly, especially as a former law enforcement member, for him, his mind goes to that. What if this is a terror attack ahead of Thanksgiving?
Thank
And
you
so surely
to
that
David
is
for
not what
joining
anyone
us
hopes for it to
on
be, but
TikTok.
we are going to hopefully hear more from officials on exactly what they are thinking of this. Now, we're continuing
This
to
is
follow
the
all of these
first time
reports
that
from
we have
reporters
ever
who are on
done
the
this.
scene there. And the two people killed in this, according to Fox News'
So
Alexis McAdams,
somehow or
are the
another, we
driver
are
of that
live on
vehicle
both
that
Rumble,
exploded, as well as the
YouTube,
passenger. So still working to get a lot of the other details
Twitter,
clarified here. In the
and
meantime, while we haven't heard from law enforcement, we have heard from the Prime Minister
Twitch.
of Canada,
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau. He spoke briefly on this. Let's take you out to what he had to say here. next.
Fun
Serious
times.
situation in Niagara Falls. There was a vehicle explosion
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Rainbow Bridge
VZU
crossing.
has
I've been
also
briefed by the NSIA and the
joined.
Minister of Public Safety. CBSA, RCMP, and Transport Canada are all fully engaged in providing the necessary support. There are a lot
Live
of
on
questions.
TikTok.
We
Thank
are
you for
following
that.
up to try and get as many answers as rapidly as possible. We are in close contact with U.S. officials and will continue to work closely with them. We will continue to be engaged. We will provide updates. Updates I can give right now is there are
We
4
gotta
border
switch
crossings that are
out
right now
some of our
closed.
camera
The
views
Rainbow
here.
Bridge, Whirlpool Bridge, Queenston Bridge, and Peace Bridge. Additional measures are being contemplated and activated at all border crossings across the country. We are taking this extraordinarily seriously. And Mr. Speaker, I will have to excuse myself now to go get further updates and work on this very serious situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so hearing from the Prime Minister Trudeau there in Canada, speaking on the limited details that we have at this very moment. We also are continuing to follow news from the White House. Karine Jean-Pierre, spokesperson, saying the president has been briefed on the vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge port of entry. He and his team are closely following developments. Certainly, we can expect to hear from Biden on this as we learn more on what happened today here. Everybody on high alert ahead of the holidays and in general right now, especially as we know so many Americans are traveling, over 55 million for the Thanksgiving holiday this year. And today is said to be the busiest travel day of the week, of the weekend, along with Sunday as well. So everybody really keeping a close eye on these developments here. We also, our crews spoke with a witness who is on the ground there. We want to play out a little bit more of what he had to say here. Obviously, we're working with very limited information at the moment, but Ricky, who is this witness that spoke with our crews on the ground, he did talk about what he was able to see. Let's play out a little bit more of his reaction here next.
Came down to the One Niagara building to see how the sales guy was doing. And I closed the door to my car, and about 30 feet from me,
We've
I
heard
seen
this guy like
something
10 times
airborne.
now.
I first thought it was an airplane. It looked like slow motion.
But
And I
TikTok
said,
has
"My
it, so
God,
let's
it's a
play it
car."
again for TikTok.
And it's a vehicle, and it's flying through the air. He hit the concrete barrier probably right at the signal, God knows how many thousands of feet before the bridge. It went airborne. The vehicle began to turn sideways and went under something overhead, and then it hit something over there. And my prayer was just, please don't let any of the officers, get hit over there. And then all this.
Oh, of course, now I'm
Sudden
buffering.
black smoke, no explosion. We all heard, the people in the building heard it, the metal on metal. Then all of a sudden I saw black smoke and then fire. There was no explosion, just the black smoke. And then there was so much smoke, it was unbelievable. After a while, it probably took 5 minutes for law enforcement to get here. But that's exactly what happened.
How fast did you estimate that he was going?
Well, the other fella, the guy that drives the cab, says he thinks he was doing 100 miles an hour coming down this street here. But to me, it was like slow motion when the vehicle was up in the air. And he was just airborne. I can't imagine how it got that high up. So he had to be doing quite a speed for that to happen.
What was going through your mind?
Pardon me?
How were you feeling?
It was like a movie. It's strange because I can play it in my mind very fast or in slow motion. And it's like a movie. I'm saying, oh my, and then all of a sudden I see a vehicle. It looked like an SUV, but who knows what I saw. But it was a vehicle and it was in the air.
How close would you say it was to where the bridge inspectors would be?
When the vehicle went airborne, it was down by the signal. It hit something like a concrete thing that goes on an angle, and then it went up. It was up in the air, and it started to turn sideways, and then it went in. At that point, I was just praying that it didn't hit any of the Border Patrol officers.
So you didn't see it actually strike where their booths are or anything like that, or?
It went underneath, and then metal hitting metal. That's exactly what I heard. It was metal on metal.
Where were you at the time?
I was
I've
right
done
across the
something
street.
that,
There's the One Niagara building directly across the street. It was
messed up
like it was
my
50 feet away from me, but that's
feed
exactly
on
what happened. That car
feed
did
on
not get on
TikTok.
top. It
Sorry,
was
TikTok. I'm
airborne.
new at this.
Were the flames shooting up in the sky?
No, it was black smoke, and then like they weren't shooting up. It was like like a bonfire or something like that. Then they eventually did get higher. They started out low, and then the flame got bigger and bigger, and then it went down. And by that time, the fire department. Then I think they wanted everybody out of the area.
Could you see how many people were actually in the vehicle?
No, I could not see how many were in there. It was just airborne. The only thing I remember is it turned sideways and then hit over there. And at that point, don't let it hit anybody else. So this is the truth.
What
This
did
is
you do after the fact? Were you just standing there in shock?
I'm still a little bit shaky. I'm,
Oh,
I just
okay. Here we
I
go.
just
Now
sorry
we're
about
back.
that. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just like like something you see in Hollywood or something. And like, it's strange because I can replay it either in slow motion or fast. But it looked at that point when the vehicle was in the air, it was like it was moving 30 or 40 miles an hour.
And how did you happen to be here?
Good God, anyone try to use extra member stuff? I'm so dizzy.
And we get laid off in the winter. So I came down here to talk to the
Ooga
sales guy
booga
just to see how
on
things
Rumble.
are going rather than stay home and get bigger than I already am. Just to come down and shoot the breeze. I've been a guide here in Niagara Falls for 15 years.
Have you spoken to Homeland Security? Did they interview you at all?
Yes, the FBI came into my house. I gave them a statement. And then finally, but before I gave them a statement, because I gave the officer my license and he said, I said, if I can help you, he took my license, my name and number. I'm seeing all this stuff on the news that was inaccurate. And the news had already called me, but then they just called. I just had an interview with them. They came to my house maybe 35, 40 minutes ago.
Can you say and spell your first and last name again?
Ricky, R-I-C-K-I-E Wilson.
And that was the FBI that interviewed you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
They didn't say not to talk to anybody, but I'm seeing all this stuff that's inaccurate. This is exactly what I saw.
I think I might have an echo.
Cameras. I informed them on some of
When I talk.
the one Niagara inside, and they should be able to play footage back. But that's what I seen.
I mean,
Maybe
given all
not.
your years being a tour guide down here, is this just unlike anything you've ever seen?
Yeah.
Okay, you're listening in here to this.
We are
witness.
learning,
Ricky is
TikTok.
his
I am
name.
learning
Our
how to
crew is
use
speaking
you.
With him about what he says he saw during this deadly explosion. 2 people killed in this incident. Right now, your time is 4:30 Eastern. We are getting word that we're expecting
Well,
to
Ooga
get
Booga,
a
be
New York
careful with the
safety briefing
earwax.
here at the top of the hour. The New York City Mayor Eric Adams expected to be speaking there. Obviously, we've also heard that the New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been briefed on this incident. It wouldn't be surprising if we did hear from her as well coming up here soon. But right now, the focus is trying to get some of these details clarified because it is very important. And there's a lot of people who need to be commuting through the area. And so everybody wants this to be a safe situation for all involved. Let's step away for another commercial break here. We still have much more to get to. A lot of
Okay, I'm gonna have
breaking
to
news that we're
move the
following
commercial
here
break.
on this Wednesday. We'll be right back.
I'm gonna do a poll on TikTok asking them whether or not they think this was a terrorist attack. Yes. No. Maybe. We'll do it for 5 minutes and see how that goes. I'm not sure that my poll is showing up.
Welcome back. I'm Lexi Petrovich. You're watching live now from Fox. Thanks for being with us on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And it's a very busy one, too. At that, we're following breaking news out of New York, the border there between Canada and New York, as there was an explosion that happened earlier today.
At least when I look at my live, I don't see
more information here.
I don't
as
see the
to
poll.
whether this is going to be confirmed as a suspected terror attack, or if that was not the case in what happened here. Of course, we want to be very careful about the information that we're bringing you here. A lot of
So in the
things
upper
really
right-hand
developing
corner,
moment by moment. We're going to
they
continue
have to click
talking
on
with
it.
guests throughout our programming today,
Or the
as
upper
we
left-hand
get
corner,
their
they have to click
expert
on it.
input
That's
on what is exactly happening, including the former head of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. He'll also be speaking with us here at 5 o'clock Eastern. That's also around the time that we're expecting to hear from officials in New York. They're expected to give a safety briefing today, and that was before any of this even unfolded here. And as we wait to see what officials say about this, as they comb through surveillance video, they speak with witnesses, trying to get a better understanding on if this could have
Booga,
potentially
booga,
been
I
a
don't feel so
suspected
good.
terror
Better have a couple of
incident.
beers.
We do want to
Cool
also
channel
remind you
sucked.
that the
Well, thank
injured
you, Ooga
officer,
Booga.
there were 2 people killed, according to Fox
And
News'.
you know,
Alexis
I'm
McAdams
having
saying that the
a
driver of that vehicle
signature
that
peach
exploded, that was one of the victims.
that
The other
contains
that died
5%
in this was
alcohol.
the passenger of that vehicle.
I
But there was
don't know
also
if
an injured officer involved in
you know
this
that's gonna really
incident, and
solve
that
your problem, but
officer
I
works
hope
for
it does.
Customs and Border Protection. So an interesting note there. So we are working to still hear, though, from officials if that has any relation to the source who has said that this could have been potentially a terror attack here. Of course, everyone really on high alert right now as we work to get more information here. We're also following other breaking news, though. This isn't just the only incident that we're following right now. Let's give you another live picture. This is out of Washington, D.C., where we're getting a live picture in here of a shooting that happened there. Police investigating the shooting of a uniformed U.S. Park police officer and another person in Northwest.
That's not
According to
good.
police, this shooting that happened this afternoon is in the area of 12th Street across from M Street.
So there's
Towers.
also a shooting
Left
that's
2
being
people suffering
investigated.
from
Could not
serious
possibly
gunshot
could be
injuries.
unrelated.
Both of those individuals have been transported to a nearby hospital. And as of this point, we don't have an update yet on their condition. Police do say that a handgun was recovered from the scene there, and there's no word on the reason behind the incident. So just like what we're following out of New York and the Canada border there, this also very much developing as we work to get more information here.
Thank you to Aliens for also joining on TikTok. I am going to probably play a game later
Meanwhile,
on
we're getting
TikTok.
another live picture here. This also out of New York. You can see
My,
a rally that is underway right now. This is a Gaza
Computer
rally
uses up
happening
a
in
lot
Union
of
Square,
battery
New York.
whenever
And
I
as we're keeping our
switch
eyes
to
on the
trying to
other incident
broadcast
that is at the border
on
in, near Buffalo, Niagara,
you know, I
that
have a
impacted
Mac,
travel
but I
and
did this
whatnot.
thing where
We
you could
already knew
switch
that New York had
to
heightened their security
having a
ahead
sectioned
of the
off where
holiday
you
in
use
general. There were
basically
rallies such as this one that have been planned,
Windows
of course,
programming,
also all the Thanksgiving
and
traditions
you
that come with
open it
the holiday
and
as well. So
you partition
security's
it.
already been heightened for that reason
If I
alone. And now we have
if I open
this
it up in
breaking
Windows,
news
I
that we're
can
following that also only amplifies
broadcast
the
on
need
TikTok
for extra
using their
security and all
software,
that is happening,
but I
especially
cannot do
at a
that
time that
when I
tensions
open
are
it
high
up
across the
on
country.
its
The
on
Israel-Hamas
Mac.
war, the Ukraine-Russia
So
war.
right now
So
I
much
have
coverage that we're
used
following, and many of
quite
these
a bit of
rallies taking
battery.
place
I'm at
in the
43%
midst of
plugged
it.
in. At some point, it possibly could start to die on me, so I'm going to be having to monitor that. But we
also,
are
though,
planning
heard
on
from the
going
UN
to lunch
Security
with my
Council
parents,
today,
so that's
speaking
another
on the
thing as well.
Israel-Hamas war.
Or
The
to dinner,
situation
I
in
have to
Gaza,
make
of
sure
course,
that
this
I'm
comes as an
ready in
agreement
time for
was
that.
reached
We're
to deal with Hamas to
doing
release 50 hostages, women and children in particular. It was something that had been in the works for quite some time. And officially yesterday evening, that was finalized. The UN Security Council speaking on this. And of course, as we're going to play this out for you, some of their remarks, we're going to also continue to show you these breaking news pictures that we're following. Again, still much more to come. We'll have a guest here coming up at the top of the hour to talk more about the situation at the border. And we also
I believe I gotta be
bringing
ready
that
by
safety briefing
5:30.
out of New York as well, also scheduled for 5 o'clock Eastern. So in the meantime, let's take you out to the UN.
Yeah, so I've got
as
some
they
time
continue
here, but
to
pretty soon I'm gonna
discuss
have to
what's happening in the Middle East.
hop into the shower.
Bombs and the siege, those arbitrary.
But later tonight, I will
and
definitely go
all
live
those
on
suffering
TikTok,
from occupation
and we will play a game.
and racial discrimination.
I might
Apartheid.
attempt to.
We have a few days to mobilize
maybe
to stop the war
also broadcast
against
that
the
on to everything
Palestinian
else.
people. And we have a very narrow window to advance peace. We cannot continue being driven away from it. Mr. President,
I tell you what, their
will-
peace
what
deal
will
is
we
something
tell
else. Supposedly, little by
this
little, they're
generation
going
of
to
youth
have
that has gone through multiple wars,
hostages released.
surviving one to
At
endure
least
the
that's
next,
kind of the
who
hope.
kept clinging to life, trying
Yeah,
to
it's kind of
find
one
a
of those
way
days
towards
that
a better future.
we'll see.
We owe them to do better. We should not be blind to each other's wounds or traumas or history, nor dismiss them. But that respect has to be built on a common vision of the future, where all can live and let live in freedom, in dignity, and in peace and security, not where one's life is at the expense of the other. There is no coexistence with supremacy or subrogation. This is a time for courageous decisions and resolute action by all of us, guided by the imperative of upholding international law and by the urgent need to advance freedom, justice, and peace. And I thank you, Mr. President. And you have to excuse me, I have a meeting to run to, and I told you about it. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the permanent observer of the Observer State of Palestine for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this council's primary role is security. Yet, for close to 50 days, this council has not advanced a solution related to its mandate. We have heard here politicized condemnations, baseless suggestions, distorted calls for calm, and extensive outcry over the humanitarian situation of only one side. Yet, what we have not heard was a single real solution. We can have many, many more briefings, debates, and emergency sessions, but if this council cannot suggest, united, a solution that also ensures the safety of Israelis, then it doesn't address the security of both.
All right, listening in here to this UN Security Council meeting that happened earlier today, speaking on the war as we continue to follow this other breaking news and, of course, all of the live pictures that come with it. Let's show you again what we're looking at here. First is this view from the Rainbow Bridge overhead as we're waiting for more information as to what happened in this explosion. 2 people dead in it. And there's going to be a lot that's going to come from this throughout the day, a lot that we're going to continue to learn. And the good thing is about staying here with us, we're able to take you through
It may
all of
take
this as it's
days
happening
before they
live,
even identify who
there's
these
nothing
people
in
were.
between that you're going to not see here. We're showing you every bit of this breaking news, all of these live pictures, and any information that we get from whether it be a witness or an official law
There's
enforcement.
one thing that you gotta
speaking on
realize:
a
if
breaking news
that
scene.
thing
And
was
speaking of
stolen,
that, we do have this live
that
feed that's
vehicle
coming in
stolen,
right now.
I
This is out
mean,
of Albany, New York, where we're learning that Governor Hochul of New
what
York,
can you really do?
she's expected to speak here on the Rainbow Bridge incident, and that could happen any moment
You
now.
gotta
So
figure
we have
out
our
who it
eyes
was
on this
that
feed here. We're ready to bring it to you as soon as it
did the
begins. Let's slide away
stealing. Is
for a
kind of
quick
the first
commercial
thing.
break, though, as we wait for this one to start up.
So It's certainly possible for that initially to not be clear. Well, I was the only one that apparently participated in the poll. It's okay, TikTok. I forgive you for not participating in my poll. It's alright. I really need to mute that music there. All right, well, let's go back to Twitter and see what is being reported on Twitter. It's kind of looking like we might not really have much to report. That's some stuff about Israel officials say there's a delay in the implementation of the hostage deal. Israeli national security advisor says the hostages won't be released before Friday. Of course! Because Hamas is gonna jerk it around and jerk it around. There was some mixed feelings about this whole peace deal thing. Apparently they were supposed to do a little by little, and come on, let's find some stuff out about the bombing. So 15 minutes ago, BNO News, car which exploded in the U.S. Cuban unit did not have explosive sources, says after Jeff News walks back earlier reports. So apparently Fox News is walking that back. But according to Ready Alerts, a U.S. military E-60B aircraft, let me enlarge this, is now airborne over Buffalo, New York after today's incident at the U.S.-Canada border. The aircraft has remote control over U.S. Minuteman ballistic missiles. And as you can see, it is doing an interesting loop. So yeah, they're on high alert. They're on high alert. It is unknown at this time whether this was a pre-scheduled flight or in direct response to the incident. Looks like they were practicing approaches at Buffalo Airport, but unknown what the actual exercise mission was at this time. It's kind of a strange coincidence. But you know, it's always possible that they had some sort of pre-exercise training planned. But it's super sus to me. some stuff here on Ukraine. NBC contradicts Fox News and reports that no explosives were found on a vehicle that crashed at the U.S.-Canada border. So now let's look at this and
get away from the Border Patrol agents.
And remember, the guy said that it did not look like it exploded. Let's see what. The guy said it didn't look like it exploded. It looked like it just caught fire.
Also in the
Well, let's
driver's
see
seat,
what actually
obviously,
happens
they were
here.
trying to cross from the U.S. into Canada, and they were trying to avoid Border Patrol agents, according to this source who just got this update. That car then started going at a high rate of speed and crossed over the median to try and get away from the Border
And
Patrol agents.
it is weird the way the car kind of caught fire, exploded the way it did, because actually that's not technically supposed to be easy to do. It's not supposed to be technically easy for cars to just explode like that. So that is interesting. It's interesting that it's getting walked back. But Fox News right away was trying to say that this was an obvious terror attack. But as they mentioned here, you know, not everybody was on board with making that assumption. The some of the other, like they said, NBC contradicted it. That War Monitor retweeted that video that I just showed you. They were trying to cross the U.S. into Canada and trying to avoid Border Patrol agents, according to the source. The car went up in flames because it crashed at such a high rate of speed. That's possible. I've heard. Ooh, wait a minute. We've got better video here. You got to realize that there is open source cameras like all over this place. So that doesn't surprise me that people have found this. Oh, just play it. Just play it. Come on. We want to see it actually crash. What the fuck? We're not going to see it actually crash? Come on, dudes. So, I mean, at least some of the officials are now walking back. Let's be an explosion and a terrorist attack. This is probably going to be one of the few times that you're going to hear me say bullshit. Probably one of the few times. Yeah. I think it was a terrorist attack. I'm calling it. Russian actress killed in Ukrainian strike while performing for soldiers. That's unfortunate. I don't like to hear about people who are not directly involved in a war dying, regardless of what you think about Ukraine or Russia or anything. Most deaths are needless and should never have happened, but you know. All right, it is now almost 5 o'clock, which means I have to get ready to be picked up by my parents. Stay safe out there, you all. Stay aware, stay awake. And remember, the world may feel small, or the world may feel very large, and you may at times feel very small. But remember, it takes all of us working together to make a difference. It takes all of us. You know, we all have a role to play. That's what I'm trying to say here. And so you are important. You are valued. God bless. Thank to the small cadre of people who joined me on TikTok, and I will likely see you later on TikTok tonight to play a game. God bless. Goodbye.